Why don't cannibals eat class clowns? Because they taste funny. Mr. Matus was standing in the corner with his eyes closed. I went up to him. "What are you doing?" I asked. "You're on in just a minute." He took a few deep breaths. "I'm taking your advice." "Mine?" Mr. Matus nodded. "I heard you tell Dr. Deal it was a good thing to do some breathing exercises before you go on. If I can't get bigger laughs than some of the other teachers, I'll never be able to hold my head up in the teacher's lounge. I've got a lot riding on this." "I never knew that the teachers were so competitive," I said. "Believe it," said Mr. Matus. He wiped his hands on his pants. I left him alone. I went back on stage and took the microphone. "I know you're going to find our next contestant funny. In his last appearance doing comedy, he drew a line 3 blocks long." Then they took his chalk away. And I'm not just trying to butter him up, because you all know why the cannibal got expelled from school. For buttering up his teacher. Here's my very own homeroom teacher, Mr. Matus. "Thank you, Bobby," said Mr. Matus. He took the microphone in his hand and held it close to his mouth. Somehow, he just looked very relaxed on the stage. The other teachers had looked so much more nervous. He looked over at me. "Bobby, at least you don't have to be worried of cannibals. You know why cannibals don't eat class clowns, don't you? They taste funny." He paused and looked out at the audience. He was good. I hadn't told him that I was going to tell the cannibal joke, so his comeback was ad-libbed. I was really impressed. "Most of you know I'm a new teacher," continued Mr. Matus. He paused again. Something about his pause made everybody laugh. "I've learned a lot in my first year. For example, I used to think that I knew what it meant to be insane. Now I see that insanity is just part of the job description." I listened to him. He wasn't telling jokes. Mr. Matus was just making fun of himself as a new teacher, and he was getting the most laughs of any teacher. Being a teacher means constantly playing straight man for your kids. For example, during geography, I made the mistake of asking the class where the English Channel is located. "We don't get that channel on our TV," said Willie. "Thanks, Willie." Then there was the time we were studying Columbus, and I asked if they knew how Columbus's men slept on the ships. "With their eyes shut," said Sahira. I had to admit that she had the right answer. See, first-year teachers make a lot of mistakes. There was the day I had warned my class that we would have a test, rain or shine. They got out of it. It was snowing. Although, I'm not actually really sure they didn't get Bobby Garrick to go up on the roof and sprinkle ivory flakes past my window. Mr. Matus got a pretty big laugh with that one. "Don't laugh," said Mr. Matus. "You don't have Bobby in your class." There was the time that I tried to control my class. I yelled, "Order, children, order!" Bobby Garrick yelled out, "A cheeseburger with fries and a Coke!" And now, thanks to Bobby, we're all out here laughing. Thank you very much. Mr. Matus got a big round of applause. He put the microphone back on its stand and came off stage grinning. He knew he had done well. He clapped me on the shoulder. "I hope you don't mind those stories about you. I knew it would get a big laugh." "It's okay," I said. It surprised me how much he had remembered. Mr. Matus had sounded so natural. You could tell the difference between him and the others. He was himself. All my books said comedy wasn't about telling jokes. Jokes are easy. Comedy is hard. I went and stood in a corner. I closed my eyes. I was on soon. I tried to be calm, but my heart was beating triple fast. Grandma had told me to listen to my heart. My heart seemed to be telling me to run away. I swallowed hard. My brain shut down completely. I couldn't remember any of my act. I left my corner and stood just off stage. Mr. Matus had agreed to introduce me. He bounded back onto the stage. Somehow his energy seemed a little too much for me. Suddenly, I realized why Dr. Deal and Janine had sounded so annoyed when I got big laughs for introducing them. Okay, boys and girls, our next contestant is Bobby Garrick. Once I made the mistake of asking Bobby Garrick to name one important thing that we have today that we didn't have 10 years ago. "Me," said Bobby. And he's absolutely right. Without him, none of us would be enjoying ourselves this morning. So let's put our hands together for the boy who gave us this great laugh-off. Here's Bobby. I walked on stage feeling as dead on my feet as a zombie. I looked at the microphone in front of me. When I had gone on to introduce the others, I'd had no trouble grabbing the microphone and holding it close. But now I felt as if one part of my brain were shouting, "That thing can electrocute you! Don't go near it! Mayday! Bail out!" I made myself take a deep breath. I lowered the microphone and put it close to my mouth. My mouth felt so dry, I wasn't sure that I could speak. "Hi, I said. I got a few highs back, but everybody seemed to be waiting for me to say something. They all thought I was going to be hilarious. Thanks, Mr. Matus, I said. There was a pause. People were waiting for me to make a joke back at Mr. Matus, but my mind was literally a blank. I couldn't believe it. I had read about it happening. I froze. I was bombing even before I opened my mouth. I scratched my head. Head lice, I muttered into the microphone. There were a few laughs. I could recognize Grandma's laugh. I relaxed a little bit. I remembered what I had practiced with Grandma. I've always wanted a pet, but our apartment is too small. I took the microphone off the stand and walked toward the audience. Out of the corner of my eye, I could see Mom and Dad sitting in the front row to the side. Mom kept twisting her neck around, trying to see if Jimmy was still there. I didn't want to think about my family. I searched the audience to find Janine's face in the audience, but everything was a blur. I could see little Zach looking up to me. I knew he was pulling for me. I pretended to talk directly to him. I finally got a pet small enough to keep in my apartment. Head lice. You can pick them up at school any time. I taught mine how to do tricks. I could see people starting to scratch their heads. Go ahead, scratch, I ad-libbed. I got a big laugh. I paused to let it sink in. I remembered how well Mr. Matus's pauses worked, and my comedy books all say that you had to give audience time to react, time to laugh. I looked out at Grandma. I grinned at her. I love my funky head lice. We get these notes from school. No child will be admitted with head lice. Is that fair? Isn't that discrimination? Someday, one of the little head lice dancing in my hair is going to rise up and say, why can't we all just get along? Head lice and children sitting in classrooms peacefully together? It could be so beautiful. I paused for a second. But seriously, there's a lot we could learn from head lice. Like how to do the jitterbug. And just think, we could teach them knock-knock jokes. That got a big laugh from the audience. I could even see my father laughing. I thought about the time he said that I should outgrow knock-knock jokes. I bet I can guess what their first one will be. Knock, knock, I shouted out. Who's there? Yelled the kids in the audience. Police, I yelled. Police who? Shouted back Jimmy, so loudly that his voice floated over everybody's. It was one of his favorite jokes. Mom twisted in her seat again. Grandma looked back at Jimmy. Police, stop telling me these stupid knock-knock jokes, I said. I paused again. My brother taught me that joke, I said. I grinned at him. He's here today, and he taught me lots of jokes. I licked my lips. I thought of all the jokes I had written about how dumb my father thought Jimmy was. I couldn't say them. I felt as if my brain were splitting in front of me. I needed to go with a safe joke. I remembered one about a parrot that I had heard on TV. As I said, we can't have pets in our apartment building, so I hang out in pet stores. I saw a parrot for sale. He had a red ribbon tied on one foot and a blue ribbon tied on the other. What are the ribbons for? I asked the pet store owner. It's a very special parrot, said the owner. It was trained to talk by pulling on its ribbons. If you pull the red ribbon, the parrot will sing the Star-Spangled Banner. If you pull the blue ribbon, the parrot will recite the Gettysburg Address. What happens if I pull both ribbons at the same time? I asked. And the parrot screeched, I'll fall off my perch, stupid. I got a big laugh. I paused to appreciate the sound of it. I was sweating so much I thought I was having a meltdown. All of my books on comedy said to get off the stage when you got a big laugh. I put my mouth as close to the microphone as I could. Thank you, I said. I ran off the stage. I was shaking all over. I ran to the bathroom backstage by the band room. I could taste vomit in my mouth. It was all too much. Jimmy, Mom, Dad, Grandma, the jokes, the pressure of being on stage. The fact that I had lost my nerve. I hadn't even told any of my best jokes. I threw up. Luckily, I missed my tie.